Notice that not only do you have access to the cluster components, but here as well, you have the ability to enable the virtual SAN configuration. And even also ask for whether or not you want to automatically claim the disks, or now you want to select them on yourself. So that shows actually how simple it is.
And automatically means that vSAN will decide how to organize those disk groups, right?
It doesn't have to worry about have to put them together, it just automatically does them on its own. You don't have to have any prior knowledge of how that works. Another one that's pretty big, it's pretty impactful, when it comes to maintenance mode. One of the things we have to deal with, now that we're dealing with a converged infrastructure, traditionally when you get into maintenance mode, you normally just migrate your VMs off. But now you have one more thing that's very important. Your data is there. Now the system has given you 3 options of what to do with that data when you want to evacuate and put a host into maintenance mode. Because we're accessing data. You have the option to say, guarantee accessibility, which just basically means move only the components and objects that are active, do a complete offload, or do none, depending whether you have a configuration that has a lot of availability in terms of failures to tolerate. Something else that's just as important is the accessibility of the data. So when it comes to some of the different scenarios that could happen in a cluster, because now we depend on every host contributing data, what happens when you cannot access one particular host? The impact here is this. Not being able to access a particular host means that I may not be able to access a portion of the data. That still doesn't mean that your data is that your virtual machine is going to be accessible. So you can see here, I'm pointing out where there's a host, particularly which can potentially become isolated, right? A single host. It means that the data that's actually running there could have an impact on something else, but in reality, because vSAN already takes care of putting and distributing file components and objects everywhere, you won't necessarily have an outage. But in the event that you do, what happens is HA brings it back up, right? So you're covering all that asset, which happens automatically. Now, when you look at a much bigger sort of scenario, where we're dealing with clusters, and for those of you that are, I'm sure everyone here already knows about vSAN, but we can scale up to 64 nodes, right? Being able to spread these objects onto different hosts is very critical and important. So we can guarantee accessibility and make sure that at point of a failure, we have access to the data. Here, you also have a scenario where the cluster becomes isolated. A portion of the host cannot talk to another portion of the host. What happens here?
Or some cluster.
Oh, I'm sorry. Correct. You're not able to participate as part of the cluster. Now, what happens here is that you can identify the failure. The system tells you automatically. But then on top of that, as long as you have and maintain majority access to the objects and components, you're accessible, right? We can bring that back up. It automatically makes back your virtual machine. That's all part of the management integration that exists between vSAN and the rest of the vSphere platform, which is very, very important on how we meet and define some of those goals that we're targeted towards the vSphere app. That's exactly how it's delivered and why vSAN is so easy to sort of manage and control for a particular vSphere.
Right. And actually, I would like to, while we're trying to switch back to the slides,